What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to another edition of Be Shafe Daily. Brenden Schaefer here with you in the early morning hours of Saturday, April 22nd, 2023. And the reason it's the early morning hours this time, after a Friday night loss in Seattle for the Cardinals, is not because I dilly-dallied and waited until after midnight to begin recording. No, it's really that I didn't have much other choice, as the Cardinals game just recently wrapped up within the last half an hour or so, as it started at 9:10 Central, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of those over the next 9 or 10 days with the West Coast swing well underway now, but we'll still have Be Shafe Daily, and you'll still be able to listen each morning. That's the name of the game. Didn't have an episode on Thursday, just simply because, well, a couple of reasons. One, there was no Cardinals game to break down, and I did record a podcast on Thursday. It just did not land on the Be Shafe Daily feed. Something new I'm going to begin to do more of, some bonus podcasts. And a lot of times the Be Shafe Daily will still happen daily, but on a Cardinals off day, it's maybe a chance to rest from the full podcast on occasion. If there's news and there are things we need to talk about, we'll still have a show. But that was not the case Thursday, because the one thing I really wanted to talk about, which was the Madison Bumgarner situation. He was DFA'd by Arizona earlier this week after the Cardinals took him out behind the woodshed on Wednesday in that 14-5 win. And so I did a little bit of a conversation about that and some other odds and ends about the Cardinals for my Patreon. Patreon.com/BShafer12. A couple new people signed up once I posted that podcast. If you are a avid podcast listener, you listen to Be Shafe Daily all the time and you love it, this will be something extra for you to maybe incentivize to support the show on Patreon, because the bonus podcast will only land on Patreon. So it'll be some extra content that you get for doing me a solid and supporting what we do over there. And it's really what we do over here and everywhere else that you'll be supporting as well. The Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, the YouTube. It's all my content. And this is just kind of that next step. If you want to take it, you're at least going to get something for it now with some bonus podcasts. I've been meaning to really ramp up the Patreon more. Now's the time to do that. And so if you've got Patreon podcast ideas too, where you say, hey, this might not be suitable for an hour-long Be Shafe Daily or something, but I want to know about this topic, might be something that lands on the Patreon, because for those who are supporting a little extra, I want to be able to provide value to you beyond just you listening to this show. So that's the name of the game. That's the plan over there. Check it out once more, patreon.com/BShafer12. But that's why no show Thursday. There was no show because we did a bonus podcast over on Patreon. No show Friday because the Cardinals game hadn't really ended until the very bitter end of Friday. And bitter it was, as the Cardinals once again couldn't win the series opener. They have not won a series opener all year, and they drop in this one to an 8-12 record. And yeah, that's not great. The Brewers lost at least. The Pirates kept rolling. The Pirates are like 14-7 at this point. It's the Cardinals and the Reds just sitting down in the basement. The Cubs even won against the Dodgers on Friday because they nearly had a perfect game by Drew Smyly. So, yeah, the sky is sort of falling a little bit when it comes to the Cardinals and their standing within the NL Central as they drop it 5-2 out in the Pacific Northwest to Seattle, who, that's another team that has not started the season well. And so probably right to be frustrated if you're a Cardinals fan right now with the way things are going. It's not like you're going out there and playing against a team that's been red hot. The Diamondbacks had been a pretty hot team, and so they take 2 of 3 from you. It's a bummer, but you go, well, at least they're playing well. The Mariners haven't really been playing well. They just got swept by the Brewers, which maybe is a credit to the Brewers, but nevertheless, both teams came into this game with an 8-11 record, and the Mariners now 9-11, getting a little closer to 500. The Cardinals heading the other way at 8-12 as they lose the Steven Matz game of this series, and they go up against a pretty good pitcher in George Kirby. We'll talk about his impact on at least one of the Cardinals, because we saw something interesting from Tommy Edman after we talked about wondering if maybe he would consider giving up switch hitting to take advantage of the success he's had from the right side of the plate. We saw something a little bit interesting on Friday night, but I'll explain why that's maybe a one-off situation and not something that I expect is going to continue regularly for Tommy Edman. Talk about that a little bit on tonight's Be Shafe Daily, as well as the Matz outing. He threw the ball well, but then sort of hit a wall there in the 6th inning. Jordan Walker, he had a good swing against George Kirby that we want to mention. Jordan Walker's been going through it a little bit, and so good to see him able to do something tonight offensively, but the rest of the offense was, it was kind of an ugly game. It's one of those where, are you going to tip your cap to a good pitcher in George Kirby, or do we have concern over this offense? Kind of going back to their old ways of, well, you scored 14 one day, and then the next time you play, you get held to 2. Which I think that was the prediction I gave on the big show this afternoon. I got to go back and check that, but I think I said 5-2. Man, I'm smart. Yeah, I didn't think the Cardinals would have, I joke, but I didn't think the Cardinals would have the win today. I didn't think it would go their direction. I thought Steven Matz would be about what he was. I just thought maybe he would be a little less efficient, so they'd take him out sooner to try to get aggressive with it. But it's a shame that the Cardinals were able to jump out first, take the lead, and then you kind of squander it and don't do anything offensively outside of the Jordan Walker hit that drove in a couple of runs early in the game. That's what really hurts about it. It wasn't like you just were bested by the Mariners throughout the game. You had them. You had a 2-run lead. They spotted you 2 pretty early, and you weren't able to sustain that or take advantage of it. So we'll talk about the game, and we'll also talk about Paul DeJong, because that guy is a hot topic on Twitter, as he had a nice day for Memphis, wrapping up his rehab assignment. It's going to be soon. It's going to have to be soon that they'll make a decision on him with, I don't know the exact day, but the 20-day maximum of your rehab that you have as a position player in the minors. It's coming too, and the move should be forthcoming to have Paul DeJong rejoin the team. I assume it'll happen on this road trip. And we'll talk about why that's fine, why that's not the end of the world, the major impediment that a lot of Cardinals fans are kind of chicken littling about, to say that, oh, Paul DeJong's, he's going to take at bats from the good players on the team. No, he's not. I'll explain why that is in the role that I expect for Paul DeJong tonight on B-Shape Daily. Make sure you're subscribed on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we'll also put this one on YouTube if you want to listen over on YouTube. YouTube.com/@BShafer12 is the way to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And make sure to like every stream on there. Make sure to rate and review on your audio podcasting apps like Spotify and Apple. And we'll have a little fun with B-Shape Daily this summer, as long as the dang team can have some fun itself. I don't know how much fun we'll have if it's a 70-win and 92-loss season for the Cardinals. I still don't think that's going to happen. I still don't think it's going to be that kind of year, but it won't be early forever, right? We say, oh, it's still early. It won't be early forever. We won't be able to say it's still early in mid-May. I said give him that 6-week mark. And if things still look really rough, then we might have some problems. But for now, I don't know that I'm freaking out. And people may not like to hear that. But again, we're just 2 days removed from them playing a great game, winning 14-5. But I thought it was interesting tonight. Derek Gould, I'm obviously not out in Seattle, but Derek is on the beat there with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And I watched the Oli Marmol post-game interviews from his office out there in Seattle. And Derek asked the question about the series openers and the fact that the Cardinals have not been able to win any this year, and whether that's a source of consternation, what he thinks about it. And he basically said that's not something that they look at. He's not worried about it. He said, we kind of did this on the road last year as well, and we still won the division by a bunch of games. And so it's not really a stat that he's monitoring. And in that clubhouse, they don't really, Oli said they don't even know about it. Well, I guarantee you guys like Paul Goldschmidt don't know about it, because Paul Goldschmidt is a guy that, I forget if this was last year or maybe 2021, but we were in the clubhouse after a game, and it was the last day of a month, whatever month it was. Let's say it was the last day of May. And the Cardinals had been going through a little bit of a struggle. And one reporter asked him and said, hey, so you got the win today, and tomorrow's June 1st. Yeah, is that something, turning the calendar? Can that kind of get you guys turning over a new leaf? Just good timing there. And he said, I didn't know the date. Tomorrow's June. All right, first time hearing of it. Like, the dude is a robot. We joke about him being a baseball playing robot, but it's true when he's in game mode, like in the season. A lot of these little details that we think we fixate on, media fixates on, fans fixate upon, guys like Paul Goldschmidt, they really don't. And like, you sometimes hear different guys say things, you go, okay, they're just saying that. They're just saying they don't pay attention to X, Y, or Z, and they don't get caught up in those details because that's what they think we want to hear as fans or media. No, it's not just a gimmick with guys like Paul Goldschmidt. But I imagine that some of the people in the clubhouse are aware of the struggles that this team has had on the first games of series. They haven't won one, and we're going to be through pretty much a month here before long. If they don't win their first game in the next series, that is going to be about a month. And so they could go the first month of the season without being able to accomplish that. Now, could it end up being fine? Sure, but I forget who tweeted this to me today, but it makes a lot of sense because you look at it and go, all right, how do you have a successful record in a season? Well, you win series. And Tony La Russa, it's so interesting to think about the differences. All he talks about, and he's been asked about it a lot, like, does it matter to win the series? He goes, not really. We just want to win all the games, and so we want to win more games than we lose. And yes, obviously winning series is a path to that, but we don't really care if it's, you sweep one series, you split the other one. It doesn't matter as long as the total wins are there. That's kind of the way Oli Marmol looks at it day by day. But Tony La Russa, man, Hall of Fame manager, say what you will about some of the tactics he might have had with the White Sox last year, that maybe he was, a little over the hill in terms of his aptitude. Although I still think you want to be careful taking it too far with that, because Tony La Russa has forgotten more about baseball than I'll ever know. However, Tony La Russa always had it as a focus to win the series. Like, that was something that mattered to him because he knew the math of it. He would say that, and I think this was the 2011 World Series book that was written. I want to say Rick Hummel co-wrote that book, or was the writer of that book through the lens of Tony La Russa. And I remember reading that book, him talking about just the value of winning these series and how important it was and how it was something that they looked at because he knew the math of it. You win more series, and this was kind of the gist of the tweet that I was sent tonight. You win more series, win more games. You win the first game of a series, you have a chance to win more series. And that's the math of it. And it's true. And I do think it matters. But again, if you lose the first game, as long as you win the other two, that's great. But like mathematically, if you're spotting them a game every series, it's very rare that you're going to be able to get where you want to go. And Ollie says, well, we did it on the road last year. Sure, but you've done it at home too this year. Like, you don't have one so far. So I think it is a concern, personally. I do think there is something to it, whether it's a road trip or whether it's just kind of getting acclimated to a new team at home. You're facing a team for the first time. You got to be able to jump on them and set the tone for a series. Like, I do think those things matter, and momentum is only as good as your next day's starting pitcher, whatever the adage is. But I still think if you're just doing the math on these things, it's easy to see why it matters. But all he says is not what they're looking at. I get it. He's a bottom line guy, and bottom line is they want to win more games than they lose. But it is a trend that fans are going to keep talking about, and media is going to keep talking about, and rightfully so. I don't think it's wrong to ask him about it. I don't think it's wrong to talk about it because it's an aspect of this team at this point that is glaring, and it's something that I think they are going to have to come around on eventually. Like, you're not going to win the division if you don't win first game of series. Like, how many series do you have throughout the year? 54? Whatever it is. You can't spot 54 games of the season. Like, let's state the obvious there. So, something the Cardinals, I think, are going to have to work out. But like I said, I predicted 5-2 Mariners on the radio today because I thought they would have it. They would be up against it today if you're the Cardinals. George Kirby is a really tough young pitcher, right-hander, and the Cardinals are typically better against lefties. We talk about Wednesday, but they can still hit certain right-handers. But I just thought, man, Kirby's going to be a tough customer for them, and he was. And even though I thought you might get a better Steven Matz start, which I think for the most part you did, what's the ceiling on that? What is the ceiling of a good Steven Matz start at this point? And I guess we were close to finding out, because if you have a clean sixth there and you go 6 innings, give up a couple of runs like he was on track to do, I think he went into the 6th inning with like 78 pitches or so. So he was in a good spot. And then once again, the Cardinals have a start that's going along okay. And then you have the 1 inning that tanks it. And it was the 6th inning where the Mariners scored 3 more runs. 2 of them are charged to Matz, who left the game after the one walk he was really upset with. And then he throws ball 4 on a 3-2 count and shows a pretty demonstrative reaction on the mound, not complaining about the call of ball 4 because it was way gone. It was way outside. But still kind of reacting to the previous call that he did not get, which was in the strike zone. But first of all, I saw a lot of people blaming Wilson Contreras for different things tonight about his defensive aptitude and things of that nature. I think you're overblowing it. I think Cardinals fans tend to do that, but I get it. There's frustration. But when I look at that play in particular, I'm not really going to blame Contreras. He didn't really set a target on it, which I guess is, can that have an impact on the umpire? Because if a guy throws it to a spot and you're not really holding out the target very clearly, and then you shift your glove a ton at the end, the umpire kind of goes, well, he missed his spot, so I'm not going to reward that as a strike. I think there's something to that. We don't have the robot umpires yet, and so you got to be able to frame things. But that's not even I wouldn't even call that framing. That's just you have to receive the pitch. But Contreras was set up way inside, and like I said, wasn't a great target, but it looked like low and in is where they were looking for that pitch, and it was up at the top of the zone. And so when you miss location by the degree to which Matz did, you probably aren't getting that call. And I don't, like I said, some people may have viewed that as a Contreras issue. I viewed it as more of a Matz issue. He just missed his spot and didn't get rewarded, even though the pitch was thrown at the top of the zone. And, well, a lot of the things I've seen this year in umpiring, I don't like in terms of balls and strikes. That's not really one that I mind too much. I'm okay with maybe missing a call that's technically the robots would have gotten it if it's a situation like that where the pitcher didn't really execute his pitch and earn it. And if it's a strike, it's a strike, it's a strike. I get it. There are those people who feel that way, and I mostly feel that way. But that was, I don't know, I thought that was pretty egregious where it's well, no kidding, you didn't get the strike call. It was at the top of the zone and your catcher was set up low and in. You might have missed your spot by 36 inches. I mean, it sucks, but it wasn't, sometimes they're not going to give you that high strike when your catcher is set up low and in. And so it didn't, let's say it didn't surprise me. It's a bummer and it's a bad beat, but it didn't necessarily surprise me that they didn't get that call. And then Matz gets pulled from the game. Drew Verhagen, probably his roughest outing of the year. But he had to come in with a difficult situation. Ends up allowing the two inherited runners to score, and then one of his own comes around to score as well. One of his own base runners. He gives up a couple of hits there in that inning. Had at least one wild pitch. I think, no, there were two. Yeah, he had two in the same inning, which, yeah. I mean, he just wasn't sharp tonight. Had a strikeout, but he wasn't sharp. I don't think that's an indictment on his whole season. He should be able to bounce back from that. But that was kind of where things went off the rails for the Cardinals. And Matz had looked so good. I mean, he was solid. He was missing bats, had 7 strikeouts. He gave up the home run. But otherwise, I mean, he looked pretty good. He was, like I said, well on his way to a 6-inning outing, allowing 2 runs. And you would take that, man, for the first game of a series. But things got away from him there in the 7th inning. And the walk that maybe shouldn't have been a walk, it proved critical. And once again, the Cardinals are on the wrong side of a call, the wrong side of a bounce, the wrong side of a batted ball, the wrong side of, you get the gist. It's been that kind of start to the season for St. Louis, and, well, it continued tonight. So, Steven Matz, I don't know. It was a good outing, but it's another one of those outings where you go, okay, 5 1/3 innings, 4 earned runs. That ain't going to do it. I mean, the ERA is 6.5 still, 6.55. I like the 7 strikeouts. He's probably your number 4 starter, right? And when Wainwright comes back, maybe you're number 5 at that point. And he has been 5th in the rotation, but I'm always thinking, okay, when you have a playoff rotation, what are you looking at? Who are you looking at? And right now you're not looking Matz's direction. I feel like he's close to where he could get to that point, but he does still give up a decent bit of hard contact per game and gave up a homer tonight as well. So, the Cardinals need him to be better, be what he was tonight for the first 5 innings, and then they need him and everybody else. It's not exclusive to Steven Matz, but they need them all to be able to have those good 5 innings and then go a little deeper. Teoscar Hernandez got the home run in the 4th inning against Matz. It is what it is, man. I mean, the rotation, the problems are what they are. It's not new. We know about it, but he's being paid $11 million this year and then run it back 2 more times the next 2 years. So Matz, he's the one guy that I think you could see replaced by a July if he's still, sporting a 6.55 ERA by then it's a different conversation. But for right now, it's he's getting paid to be in there, and who's really jumping up to take his spot? Maybe nobody. We liked what we saw from Liberatore there for a while, but he got roughed up a little bit in his last outing. Dakota Hudson had been pitching a little better, but he's now on the injured list in the minor leagues. I don't know if a reason for that was ever disclosed, but Dakota Hudson, I don't think he's physically ready to hop right in. Interestingly enough, James Nail, you remember him? He came up as a reliever last year, the local kid from Cape Girardeau area. He's now in the Memphis rotation. He pitched pretty good tonight. We'll talk about the Memphis game a little bit when we get into Paul DeJong, but James Nail, 5 innings, 2 runs, and he's got a 1.84 ERA. I like that they put him back in the rotation. I don't know that he's a guy that's ever going to get a crack at the big league rotation, but he's given some valuable innings down there in Memphis right now. So good for James Nail. I hope he gets another shot in St. Louis. You know, he was a guy who battled, but you probably don't see the stuff as being like long term going to be a fixture, but it's a good story, and so I appreciate that. I'll root for James Nail for sure. But let's talk about the rest of the offense. What's going on, man? It's one of those things where I get it. It's going to be frustrating to see only 3 hits tonight, first game of a series, game after you score 14. This is, and I try to be honest about it. Sometimes it's, man, the offense needed to do better. You faced Vince Velasquez and you didn't get the job done. That's not really how I feel tonight. George Kirby, like I said, coming in, I thought it would be a struggle. You'd like to see more than 3 hits. They're honestly lucky to have scored 2 runs when you consider the dormant nature of the offense. That's just a timely hit by Jordan Walker to take advantage when you had 2 guys on base on second and third, I think they were. And he doubles over the head of the right fielder, going the opposite way, going backside, as they call it. So good for Jordan Walker to see. He did strike out a couple of times. But he gets a hit. Burleson got a hit. Arenado got a hit. That's it. Nobody else with a hit tonight for the Cardinals. So there are layers to it for me. Like, yes, you tip your cap. I expected it to be a tough game offensively, and if they were going to win it, they would have needed Matz to go 6 innings and give up only 2 runs, and then they would have needed a lights-out performance from the bullpen, which after Verhagen, you got a solid performance from the bullpen. Jojo Romero had to pitch around a little bit of damage, a little trouble there in his inning, and then Chris Stratton had a little damage as well, just a walk against both of those guys. But they were able to get it done, and Stratton's looked pretty good. 3.09 ERA, had 2 strikeouts tonight. But they would have needed like a very, very close 3-2 win. I think it was locked in to be a low-scoring game tonight if the Cardinals were going to have a chance. Matz could have gotten shelled, and it would have been very much not a low-scoring game. But ultimately, he did pretty well, not well enough, and certainly not well enough to give the Cardinals a chance to win with 3 hits. So the offense has got to be better. I don't know if that's going to come tomorrow. Saturday, it's Luis Castillo that they face. The bad news is he's been very, very good this year. The good news is the Cardinals actually do have some guys that have seen him and hit him well in the past, including Arenado. Goldschmidt's got a good slug against him career-wise. And Wilson Contreras obviously faced Castillo for years in the NL Central. He was with the Cubs, and Castillo a long time with the Reds. And Wilson's like 8 for 17 with couple of doubles and a homer or something like that. So he's been pretty good against Castillo. The Cardinals are going to need their big guns tomorrow to lead the charge, I think is going to be the case if they're going to beat Castillo, who has been nasty so far this year for the M's. Another Cardinal who has good numbers in terms of batting average against Castillo is Tommy Edman, who's 9 for 29 for his career, but that's with 7 singles and only a couple of extra base hits, 2 doubles, and 2 walks. So he's hitting .310 against him. On base is .355, that's great, but just a .379 slug. But still, that's an OPS, 740 or so, so not bad. But will Tommy Edman be facing Luis Castillo batting left-handed, as you would assume? He's a switch hitter, typically against right-handed pitching, going to be from the left side. Or will he bat right-handed, facing the right-handed thrower the way that he did tonight? It was interesting to see this from Tommy Edman, but he did bat right-handed against George Kirby tonight, the right-handed starting pitcher from the Mariners. And this is intriguing because we just talked about it, right? The notion that Tommy Edman's, first of all, his numbers are so much better from the right side, but he looks more comfortable from the right side too. And typically you go, well, is it the chicken or the egg? Are we talking about better numbers from the right side because he's facing left-handed pitching when he's doing that, and that's just the advantage that he has over lefties? He kills lefties. We know that. Or is it something about his comfort from the right side that just feels more natural, feels more effective, has more power, all of the above? Like, what is it? And would he continue, or I should say, would he consider dropping the switch hitting and just going full-time from the right side? Because he has struggled against right-handed pitching. And you typically would say, well, take the advantage and bat left-handed. That's the value of being a switch hitter. But same thing with Dylan Carlson that we've talked about. When his numbers are so lopsided to one direction, maybe it would make sense to go at it the other way. Now, Tommy Edman tonight did not get any base hits, and so maybe that would be a reason to drop it. He went 0 for 3, but I think he was going to drop it anyway. This is something that Tommy Edman has done before. People may not remember this, but a couple of different times over the course of his career, he's done it. It's always specifically for a matchup reason. And I figured before I even looked, I said, I bet George Kirby is a reverse splits guy. And you go and look, sure enough, over the course of his MLB career before tonight, the splits bear that out against left-handed batters, which you'd think, oh, a right-handed pitcher should struggle against lefties. He actually has very good numbers against left-handed batters, a 577 OPS, which is interesting because making out the lineup, the Cardinals, Oli Marmol made out the lineup as though they were facing a right-handed pitcher. All the typical signs were there. Brenden Donovan at the top. You've got Alec Burleson in the lineup and batting second. Jordan Walker way down at the bottom for the right on right. Nolan Gorman was in the lineup. Everything about this lineup was the typical lineup against a right-handed pitcher. But really, with the reverse splits, you maybe should have had a lineup that was more conducive to as though you were facing a lefty. Stack it with as many right-handed bats as possible. I don't know if Oli was asked about why he didn't do that or whether he considered doing that, but I think it's an interesting aspect because Tommy Edman was clearly aware of the splits, and I think he's making the decision on his own. I don't think the team is saying, hey, you need to bat right-handed against this guy because he's got a career 827 OPS against him from right-handed batters. 827. That's an all-star caliber hitter for right-handed batters against George Kirby so far in his pretty young, albeit MLB career. And then, as I mentioned, 577, I believe, was the number for left-handed batters. So that's a drastic difference, and one that I think Tommy Edman was trying to take advantage of tonight. It was in vain. It didn't end up working out with the 0 for 3. But I bring this up because I know it was a topic on Twitter. Is he gonna do it? Is he gonna drop switch hitting? My guess is, and I don't have any insight. I'm not there. I didn't get to ask him. My guess is no. He's not going to drop switch hitting. He's done this before sparingly, and this was another example of that because of the glaring reverse splits for the starting pitcher for Seattle tonight. Like I said, below 600 OPS for lefty batters. You've already struggled from the left side. I think he's something like 8 for 50, 9 for 50, whatever it is. And you have this opportunity from the right side where this he's gotten beat by righties over the course of his career, actually. And so made sense to go for it. I think it's a one-off, though, and I'll bet he's back to the left side tomorrow against Castillo, if I had to guess. But I figured it would be something that people were talking about, so I wanted to kind of address that. And I also want to address the other topic, not from the game, but certainly one that social media was a buzz about, and that's Paul DeJong. Yes, our old friend will be returning soon, if I had to guess, because he's on that rehab assignment. He's been there a while, and he just had a whale of a game on Friday night, going 3 for 4 with, and I want to make sure I got this right, he gets a home run, a double, and a base hit. I believe he fell a triple short of the cycle, unlike Tommy Edman on Wednesday, who was a single short of the cycle. That'll eat you up a little bit, I think. But Paul DeJong, 3 for 4, 6 RBIs, and a walk as well for good measure down with Memphis. His numbers there are fantastic. 353 average, an OPS over 1,000 at 1068 during his rehab assignment with the Memphis Redbirds. Now, this is nothing new for Paul DeJong. I get it. Success at AAA does not automatically equate to success at the big league level. Fernando Tatis Jr. is back with the Padres, and he hit like a home run or two in every rehab game he played. It was ridiculous what he was doing down in AAA. And then he came back and was 0 for 5 the first day with the Padres. So Fernando Tatis Jr. is a much better player all around than Paul DeJong. That difference is notable, right? Like, you're not just going to automatically waltz into a big league environment again just because you've been ripping it up in AAA and just continue on that pace. It can be done, but it's not automatic. And it's certainly not automatic for a guy like Paul DeJong, who, well, we've seen this from him before. So if you're skeptical about Paul DeJong and his return, that's fine. Here's the thing. If you're angsty about Paul DeJong and his return, I think that is a whiff on your part. I think that is misplaced angst, misplaced energy. Because Paul DeJong is not going to, despite what some people told me on Twitter tonight, walk into this St. Louis clubhouse and start taking at-bats away from Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan or Tommy Edman. Not any more than the at-bats that Taylor Motter is taking away from those players. That's the way I look at it. And in particular with Nolan Gorman, not at all. And even Brendan Donovan to an extent. Because think about the times, like Paul DeJong will get into the lineup occasionally. It won't be that often, I don't think, unless he's thriving, in which case, yeah, they'll play him more. And they'll find room for him, the same as they do with the outfielders who catch fire from time to time. They got to juggle it. But Paul DeJong is coming on this roster. I believe in Taylor Motter's spot, unless there's another injury or something happens. And it's no slight to Motter, but he's just kind of been keeping the seat warm a little bit. He's got good versatility, but, he's kind of a journeyman type. And I feel like the upside is higher for Paul DeJong on the roster than Taylor Motter. But that's your 26th man. He's not stepping in to be your starting shortstop. So Cardinals fans are acting like, oh, Paul DeJong's going to return and it's going to ruin everything. I just don't see how that's possible, guys. Like, he plays a good shortstop defense. We've known that. And so you have him as a nice defensive option there to back up Tommy Edman, just for roster versatility. Exactly what you want from the last guy on your bench, to be able to play a good shortstop if needed. He can play second. He can play third. Okay, he's got the flexibility. I think they've moved him around a little bit, and he's taking ground balls going back to spring training at different spots, so he's fine. He can play those positions if called upon, the same as Taylor Motter, and is certainly going to be a more apt defensive shortstop than Motter. I think Motter is more comfortable he would probably be comfortable anywhere, but I think Motter is more suited for second or third base. And Paul DeJong is a natural shortstop, so that's a benefit. And I think the potential to see his bat revived is higher than what Motter could give you. Now, I'm not counting on it. Like I said, we've seen these things from Paul DeJong before. I am massively skeptical that it's going to be different. And everybody say, well, he's going to hit 180 and then what? Well, he might. But if he's hitting 180 and on base percentaging 310 even, if he's taking some walks and then he's hitting some homers and some doubles, and maybe he's hitting 180, but he's got a slugging percentage of, 450. I'm not saying that's just automatically going to happen, but that would be, like, you would take that from the last guy on your bench who can also play some good shortstop defense. Don't get it in your head that Paul DeJong is going to come back and start stealing opportunities from players that you consider to be superior, because I do not believe that is going to end up being the case. He's going to be playing as much as Taylor Motter did, maybe a little bit more, because he's more of a presence on the roster, has some equity built in, has been on this team for a long time. He's got to be one of the most longest tenured Cardinals, I would think. Obviously Adam Wainwright, but beyond that, who is there? Who's been around since 2017? Not many, guys. I'm taking a look at it here now, and it's Adam Wainwright, Jack Flaherty, and Paul DeJong. I think those are the only three. Kind of crazy to think about that, but yeah, he's got some more equity built up on this roster, and so he might play a little more than the non-roster invitee that they invited to spring training camp, and he cracked the roster. But that's okay. It's not going to be, again, he's not going to be taking at-bats from Nolan Gorman, who's going to DH against right-handed pitching. Paul DeJong is going to play against lefties, if anything. And he's not going to take those at-bats away from Tommy Edman, because Tommy Edman is damn sure going to play against lefties, because he crushes them and sucks the soul out of their bodies. Like, that's what Tommy Edman does against lefties. So they're not going to sit Tommy Edman in the spots that you're likely to see Paul DeJong. Now, Brendan Donovan, maybe he loses some opportunities to Paul DeJong, but that's only if he's not hitting. Like, if Brendan Donovan, he's kind of been struggling at the plate. If he keeps struggling at the plate a little bit, 0 for 4 tonight with a couple of strikeouts, then, and if Paul DeJong is thriving, like if he's giving you a little juice at the plate, then that's a situation where maybe that would be the one spot I would say, all right, you're right. Brendan Donovan could lose a little bit of opportunity. Cardinals don't mind him against lefties, but if they've got a guy who can play second base and hit lefties well, they might consider that at that point. 699 the OPS for Donovan. I think he'll continue to go up from there. But it's been a little bit of a sluggish stretch recently. But otherwise, like, no, it's not like the sky is falling and Paul DeJong is coming to take everybody's jobs and be bad at his job while he's doing it. Like, he might struggle again. And if he does by June or July, he probably won't be on the team anymore by then. This is kind of the last go around, the last chance to prove it. But he doesn't need to do a lot to justify his spot on the team, because I don't think they're just going to thrust him right back into the lineup on a regular basis. You're not going to see a ton of him unless there are injuries. How much have you noticed Taylor Motter over the last couple of weeks? I think they're going to be a very similar role, with DeJong getting a veteran bump to that role, but it's going to be a small one. Is kind of the way I see it. He could play some second base against lefties if he shows to be seeing the ball well against lefties. That's the one change you might see. It's a small part of the roster. I wouldn't sweat it. And hey, maybe he does well and makes some Cardinals fans eat their words about him. Although I understand why frustration over DeJong has persisted over the years. Believe me, he's struggled. But he knows that, and he'll get one more shot now, I think, to make good on it. So we'll see what he's able to do. And as I'm looking over this Memphis box score, by the way, Mason Wynn, he had a nice night, 2 for 4 tonight with a run scored and a walk. But the average is just 222, and the OPS in AAA just 605. So maybe okay that they didn't bring him up to begin the season. I still believe that he will find it and be a good offensive player, not only at Memphis, but eventually in St. Louis. But, like, there's no, well, they got to trade this guy to make room for Mason Wynn. Everything's good. Everything's good right now. I think the development is going to happen on the path that it is supposed to, and, the Cardinals will be able to react accordingly to what they see throughout their system and at their big league level. But that is going to do it for this edition of B-Shape Daily. Appreciate you guys for listening, even after a loss. I'm going to keep talking whether they win or lose, so it'll be good to have you guys along. And if you want to chime in with some comments and be a little upset about that, that's okay. There used to be the voicemail function on here, but you've been hearing the ads for the show, and appreciate you guys for listening to the ads. That's the one way I do make a little bit of money off this. For Spotify for podcasters, which if you want to do a podcast, I do recommend it. They make it pretty simple. But used to be that on Anchor you could leave a listener voicemail. But I'll have to dig around on that. If anybody knows how to still do that, let me know. But otherwise, I can find out and publicize it on the next episode. But if you don't want to have your voice heard on the podcast, that's okay too. Just send me a message on Twitter at bschaefer12, proud and unverified, and we're always available over there. And Patreon's another way to send me messages too, because I am especially responsive over there. Appreciate y'all for doing that. All right, that's going to do it for this show. We'll see what they're able to do against Luis Castillo on Saturday. Miles Michaelis will get the ball for the Cardinals. I think he's going to pitch well. I think you're going to get another pitching duel, but the Cardinals could sneaky go yard against Luis Castillo. Like they might sneaky do, like they're probably going to be underdogs in the game because everybody's looking at Castillo and how good he's been. The Cardinals could have one of those kind of eruptions, win something like 8-3 or something tomorrow. That's kind of my sneaky vibe about the game. But we'll see if it's right, and then we'll talk about it afterwards right here on B-Shape Daily. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.